Should we be able to predict who is going to be Portland's next mayor today? Good morning. Paul Lindman, Scott Lynn, the morning update for a Wednesday. KUX News Time is 7:09. Willamette Week is out with a really cool interactive map that shows where the votes came in for mayor during the primary election. And as you know, Charlie Hales and Jefferson Smith will face off come fall. Let's bring in local political strategist Len Bergstein and see what he can tell us about this. Len, we should be able to know, shouldn't we? Because we know that Charlie Hales won all of West Portland and the more liberal East Side neighborhoods, and Jefferson Smith won just about all of the inner East Side neighborhoods. Shouldn't we be able to put numbers with that and know who's going to win in the fall?
Well, it's interesting, Paul. That's certainly a kind of a good snapshot of what happened with a very small electorate. The primary was a low turnout electorate, and voters were kind of reverted to form. They kind of went into kind of a conservative mode, and the two winners won in places where they have natural strength. The general election's a totally different picture. You're going to have at least twice as many voters, and there'll be people who will be brought into the race because of a presidential race, and it's much more difficult to predict what's going to happen. So right now, both campaigns, I think, are working hard to figure out exactly where most of the votes are likely to come so they can target their efforts and they can move their message a little bit so that they can appeal to what's going to be a probably slightly younger, a little bit more progressive voter in the general election.
So your answer is no. There's no way to tell right now.
Well, if you're running a campaign, you'd say, I've got a base vote. I know those people performed, they voted for me, but it was a very small slither of the electorate. So I wouldn't count the whole campaign strategy based on what happened in the primary.
And Scott, we should point out Charlie Hales won 53 precincts and Jefferson Smith 46.
And Eileen Brady won 2, and that was my question for Len, is how does that factor into the equation? I mean, Eileen obviously had her supporters.
She did, but again, it was, a relatively small number of voters who will be associated with her that will be active in the general election. The campaigns are really going to have to focus mostly on those people who didn't show up in the primary election. They're going to be looking to the voter who wasn't really kind of connected with the primary, but is really going to turn out in droves in the general.
Len, talk to us about people who changed their minds. Now, we've got Eileen Brady, the third major candidate, out, and all the others out. I think we had like 3,000 candidates or something like that.
Just a small winnowing of,
What causes a voter, if I voted for Charlie Hales in the primary, might I take a look at Jefferson Smith now or vice versa, or does that not happen? What makes it happen?
I think it happens. It happens pretty frequently, and we've got a couple of cases in the history of Portland where city council races have flip-flopped. A leader in the primary became the loser in the general, and so on and so forth. What happens is that voters kind of take a look at they concentrate their energy more on what's going on. They'll listen more to the messages that the candidates will make, and quite frankly, the economy will become an increasingly bigger picture. So both candidates will be trying to fit their narrative, who they say they are, to fit with how voters feel at the particular time of the November election. Are they feeling optimistic, pessimistic? Do they think the city's moving in the right direction or not? And therefore, are they tied into the message that, let's say, an experienced candidate like Charlie Hales has, or a more inspirational candidate like Jefferson Smith has to offer?
Let's give these guys a little free help. Give me a sentence or two for Charlie and for Jefferson, what you would tell them they have to do before November.
I think Charlie Hales has to take his experience and move it to show why he's the more progressive candidate, why he appeals to progressive voters in Portland, why he's better able to make good use of money for a progressive agenda for the city. Jefferson Smith, on the other hand, has to say, look, I can inspire people. I can help them see what government can be in Portland, and he's got to show that he's got the capability to manage a large organization so he can take the inspiration and make it effective. They both have got to kind of move their message a little bit from what how they appeal to voters in the primary, and it's not a small problem. I'm sure they're working on it right now. Exactly how do they frame their issue so that it takes advantage of their skills, but really deals with where the larger voter pool is going to be.
Our time is up, but I suspect you're not willing to pick a winner today.
Not yet. You'd have to say that the profile of the vote probably gives Jefferson Smith a little bit of advantage, a little bit more progressive voter, and yet you've got this undeniable factor that of Portland voters want an experienced hand, and Charlie's got experience.
Len Bergstein, as always, thank you so much.
You bet. Good to talk with you.